Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Peace and blessings be upon you. We begin with the roundup of the news with an announcement by our colleagues at Al-Arabiya television that U.S. forces have shot at 2 members of its team in Iraq Thursday night. A source at the television channel also said that one of its photographers, Ali Abdulaziz, was martyred. Meanwhile, their correspondent, Ali Khatib, is in critical condition. The 2 journalists were driving a car in the center of Baghdad when another car hit a U.S. checkpoint. Then American soldiers fired at both cars. May God's vast mercy be upon them. To all goes to God, and to God we shall return.
قالت مصادر إسرائيلية مقربة من وزارة الدفاع إن الانسحاب الإسرائيلي من غزة قد يستغرق عاما ونصف.
A source close to the Israeli Defense Ministry said that the Israeli withdrawal from Gaza will take 1.5 years. At this time, Israeli forces withdrew from the Rafah refugee camp in Gaza after 2 days of incursions, leaving behind 6 martyrs, a number of wounded, and heavy damage in the area. During the incursion, Israeli forces destroyed many houses, looking for tunnels used to smuggle weapons from Egypt to Rafah. However, they have not found any of these tunnels.
They are still talking about the borders between Egypt and Gaza. However, they have settlements in northern and eastern Gaza.
Our
correspondent in Gaza has informed us that an Israeli military court has sentenced Hassan Youssef, a leader of the Hamas movement in the West Bank, to 28 months in prison and an additional 3 years of probation and a financial penalty of tens of thousands of dollars. The Israeli court accused Youssef of inciting violence against Israel and being a member of an enemy organization. A source from the Spanish police said that one of the 5 people who were arrested today on suspicion of their links to the Madrid bombings is wanted by the Moroccan police on suspicion of being linked to the attack in Casablanca, which occurred last May. Spanish authorities have not revealed the name or identity of this person because he is one of 5 people who were arrested by police in Alcalá de Henares, one of the suburbs of Madrid, in lieu of an investigation of the Madrid attacks which killed more than 200 people and injured about 1,500 others. The director of a French train said that a train between Paris and London was stopped today after an unknown person phoned the police to inform them about a bomb on the railway west of Paris. Meanwhile, French authorities say that they have strengthened security measures, fearing terrorist attacks, including strengthening search operations and monitoring equipment and services, especially in places where there are large groups of people. The French authorities called on their people to take precautions, despite the fact there have been no threats made to France. A group of Syrian Kurds opened fire on a police station in the city of Qamishli in the southeastern area of the country after clashes took place in the city during which Syrian forces killed more than 20 people. The Syrian Vice President, Abdul Halim Khaddam, accused foreign forces of trying to take advantage of the clashes in the city of Qamishli without specifying their identity.
أعلن الرئيس الجورجي ميخائيل ساكاشفيلي أنه سيعمل على إزالة العقوبات الاقتصادية التي اضطر قبل عدة أيام.
The President of Georgia, Mikhail Saakashvili, announced that he would shortly lift the economic sanctions imposed on the region of the Adjara and will employ an interim government after he refused to allow them to hold elections. He gave his decision to lift the sanctions hours after the Georgian president held talks with the leader of Adjara, Aslan Abashids, in Betmi, the capital of the independent region near the Black Sea. In exchange for the Georgian president's lifting of sanctions, he received guarantees to freely campaign for the elections scheduled for March 28th.
Thank you.
اتهم المرشح الديمقراطي لانتخابات الرئاسة الأمريكية.
The U.S. presidential Democratic candidate John Kerry accused U.S. President George Bush of taking dangerous policies that led to a war on Iraq. During a speech at the George Washington University, Kerry said that American soldiers who died in Iraq were victims of Bush's policies and highlighted the rising cost of this war, which will be paid by American taxpayers. Meanwhile, Vice President Dick Cheney, supporting the election campaign, strongly criticized Kerry, saying that he does not stick to his positions.
U.S. officials say the Pakistani government believes its forces have surrounded a senior al-Qaeda figure. Pakistani intelligence sources said Ayman al-Zawahiri, Osama bin Laden's deputy, was surrounded on the border with Afghanistan. Earlier, Pakistani President Pervez Musharraf told CNN, and I quote, "We feel that there may be a high-value target," unquote. He refused to speculate on the identity of the target. Pakistani forces have stepped up operations in the tribal areas near the border with Afghanistan to try and capture members of al-Qaeda.
Now to Iraq. A United States military airplane was downed. The airplane was flying over the city of Al-Fallujah when armed fighters fired missiles at it. Meanwhile, the United States forces disclosed that 5 American soldiers were killed in separate incidents. Less than 24 hours after the explosion at the Mount Lebanon Hotel in Baghdad, another explosion occurred in front of the Barak Hotel in Al-Basra. The attack aimed at British forces. This hotel is where commanders usually conduct their press conferences. A number of people were either killed or wounded in this car bomb explosion. Ambulances rushed to the area to rescue the wounded.
وتبعتها التعزيزات العسكرية البريطانية فطوقت المكان وبدأت بدعم من
Then, the British forces surrounded the area, and in collaboration with the Iraqi police, they are investigating the incident, which coincides with the same day that an explosive device was detonated in one of al-Basra's streets, wounding a number of British soldiers. The Basra incident corresponds with other episodes in Iraq. In southern Fallujah, an American military airplane was downed by unknown armed fighters who fired a missile at it. Hours prior to the downing of the helicopter, armed men clashed with United States troops, resulting in the death of 2 American soldiers and wounded others. Afterwards, the Americans retaliated by opening fire toward Iraqi citizens. By the time the ambulances arrived, it was already too late.
Another U.S. soldier has been killed in a mortar attack at a logistics base north of the Iraqi capital, Baghdad. According to the U.S. Army, another 7 people were also wounded in the attack. And on Wednesday, in continuing unrest, a huge car bomb explosion left at least 28 people dead. The blast also left more than 45 wounded and shattered a 5-story hotel in the heart of the capital, setting fire to nearby buildings just ahead of the anniversary of the start of the U.S.-led invasion.
At least 28 people were left dead as flames and heavy smoke engulfed the Mount Lebanon Hotel on Wednesday evening after a massive car bomb explosion in the heart of Baghdad. The explosion was caught on an Arabic television station. Over 45 others were left wounded as nearby homes, offices and shops were completely torched in the busy Qarada district. Americans, Britons, Egyptians as well as other foreigners were staying at the hotel at the time. U.S. soldiers and Iraqi ambulances raced to the scene. Hussein. Rescuers using their hands and shovels pulled bodies from the rubble and searched for other victims and people believed to be still missing after the attack amid burning timbers and crumpled bricks. Frantic relatives gathered in search of their loved ones. The explosion left a crater almost 8 feet wide and 10 feet deep. The death toll is expected to rise as crews continue to search. The attack came just 3 days before the first anniversary of the start of the US-led war to oust Saddam Hussein. The hotel was a so-called soft target because it did not have concrete blast barriers and other security measures of the kind that protect offices of the US-led coalitions and other buildings where Westerners live and work. Several residents said they believed a rocket caused the destruction, but US soldiers said the damage was consistent of that of a car bomb.
Right now, 5 hours after the blast, we have pretty much ascertained that it was a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device, well over 500 pounds. Right now, we've accounted for most of the individuals dead or wounded. Right now, the count is about 25, 26 killed, 40 wounded.
The US Army estimated that the bomb contained a mixture of plastic explosives and artillery shells, the same compound of explosives used in last year's suicide attack on the UN headquarters in Baghdad, which killed 22 people. Guerrillas fighting the US-led occupation of Iraq have mounted a number of car bomb and other attacks in Baghdad in recent months, and hotels have been targeted several times. Mayal Shush, Dubai Television.
In France, intelligence experts say a letter threatening terror attacks does not bear the hallmarks of extremist missives. Interior Minister Nicolas Sarkozy said authorities were taking the threat seriously, though the group is unknown to French authorities.
Threats, 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 all over the French media on Wednesday. A letter from a shadowy Islamist group posted from the main Paris post office and sent to 2 newspapers threatened to plunge France into terror and remorse. The group calls itself the Mofsar Barayev Commando, an apparent reference to the Chechen guerrilla chief who died during a hostage-taking operation in a Moscow theater 18 months ago. The Interior Ministry confirmed earlier reports of possible attacks against France and French interests abroad. The group said France had been taken off the list of Islam's enemies because of its opposition to the US-led war in Iraq. But it said a new law banning Muslims from wearing headscarves in state schools had earned France everlasting enmity. Interior Minister Nicolas Sarkozy said the threat does not carry the customary hallmarks of Islamic extremists, but the risk is still being taken seriously, he said. President Jacques Chirac said on Tuesday France was not secure from terrorist acts after the Madrid carnage less than a week ago. This letter proved him right, sparking further anxiety and security alerts in France and beyond, just 4 days ahead of the first round of regional elections. Jamal Ali, Dubai Television.
The head of the United Nations Nuclear Watchdog Agency says Iran is fully cooperating with the IAEA over its nuclear program. Speaking in Washington on Wednesday, Mohammed al-Baradei said US President George W. Bush had expressed concern about Iran's nuclear capability.
As familiar concern here in Washington about the Iranian program, and I told them that the agency work is still work in progress, that the jury is still out, that we haven't yet come to any conclusion on the nature of the program, but we continue to apply very vigorous inspection and hopefully expect to see full cooperation, full transparency by Iran if Iran wants to prove that its program is for peaceful purpose. So again, it's work in progress. It's an issue which is high on everybody's agenda, and I hope by June, when I'll submit my next report to the Board of Governors, that we will be in a better position to clarify many of the outstanding issues. I think today Iran is cooperating fully. It was
Moving
Returning to the Palestinian territories, a Palestinian who was critically wounded in an Israeli helicopter raid on the southern Gaza Strip city of Rafah died of his wounds on Thursday. The occupation army raided Rafah's refugee camp Wednesday overnight. The Israeli army has pulled out of the camp, leaving behind a trail of destruction. Our correspondent said the forces demolished some 60 houses. Israeli helicopters had fired 2 missiles in separate attacks on the camp on Wednesday, killing 4 people in a heightened campaign the army says will help eradicate resistance fighters in the Gaza Strip. 2 teenage boys and 1 fighter were among the dead. The United States will designate Pakistan a major non-NATO ally in a move that will significantly enhance military cooperation between the two countries. The step is aimed at boosting the military presence to crack down on Taliban fighters allegedly operating in Afghanistan.
The visit of U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell to Pakistan is to check on the latest concerning the nuclear proliferation, the hunt for al-Qaeda fighters on the border with Afghanistan, and the Indian-Pakistani border crisis. Pakistan seemed to make a quick show of loyalty to the United States as Powell met several Pakistani governmental officials. Forces on Thursday morning launched a major ground and air offensive against al-Qaeda and Taliban fighters on the border with Afghanistan, where 39 people were killed 2 days ago, including Pakistani soldiers. The attacks were mere echoes to Powell's demands on the same day, urging Pakistan to do more to crack down on fighters while praising it for its actions so far.
On the security front, President Bush and the American people appreciate the sacrifices that Pakistan already has made to keep us all safer from terrorism. We share your sadness over the loss in battle in the past few days of some of your brave frontier soldiers, and we share your pride in the way that they pursued their mission to defend their nation.
So Pakistan will be rewarded now. Powell named the country a major non-NATO ally, allowing the Asian country to acquire U.S. arms. Pakistan has for years failed to obtain advanced weaponry and aircraft from the United States because of Washington's concerns about its nuclear arms programs. Now Pakistan has the priority to deliver defense material. This would assist the Pakistani military in its pursuit of al-Qaeda and the Taliban. But still, Pakistan is under U.S. inquiry over the latest nuclear crisis. The United States wants to know whether government officials were aware of scientist Abdul Qadir Khan's sales of nuclear secrets allegedly to Iran, Libya and North Korea. Powell fears that a network stands behind Khan. But Pakistani officials have repeatedly said that Khan acted on his own and without Islamabad's knowledge or permission.
Pakistan's own interest as a nuclear power, that no proliferation take place, and that we are going to spare no effort to try and make efforts to, pull this out root and branch, wherever this network is, and there will be complete sharing with the United States and with other friendly countries on that issue of non-proliferation.
Powell would also raise Islamabad's pledge to dismantle Kashmiri fighters' camps. He made the promise during his visit to India. From there, he said he was pleased that activity across the so-called line of control has gone down significantly.
At least 5 people have been killed in clashes between Kurds and the Syrian police in a riot in Aleppo, north of Damascus. The latest fatalities brings to at least 21 the number of people who have been killed in fighting between Kurds and the police since Friday. Syria has blamed the troubles on acts of sabotage and sedition, as well as unidentified infiltrators. Vice President Abdel Halim Khaddam said the troubles were being exploited by foreign parties and blown out of proportion by foreign media. He added that the unrest was now over. Khaddam said that Kurdish leaders in Iraq expressed dismay at the events and their utmost concern over Syria's security and independence. NATO peacekeepers and UN police regrouped throughout Kosovo on Thursday to put down and prevent renewed rioting and violence that left 22 dead and 500 injured in the bloodiest day since the end of the Kosovo War in 1999. About 100 American troops serving with the NATO-led peacekeeping force in Bosnia were sent to reinforce their counterparts. The chief UN war crimes prosecutor, Carla Del Ponte, said the clashes are a warning signal that the ethnic conflict between Serbs and Albanians could escalate.
Kosovo's fragile peace exploded in the worst clashes between Albanians and Serbs since NATO and the UN took control in 1999, plunging hopes of a successful international intervention into grave doubt. According to UN officials, at least 22 people were killed and 500 injured from both sides. 8 Albanians and 2 Serbs were killed in the town of Kosovska Mitrovica, where authorities have imposed a curfew. At least 61 police officers, including 40 members of UN Special Police Unit, were injured during the clashes. Tensions had reached flashpoint when ethnic Serbs had pursued 3 children aged 9, 11 and 12 and pushed them into the icy Ibar River. UN spokesman Derek Chappell said police had found 2 children dead and were seeking the third. Late on Wednesday, hundreds of angry Albanians surrounded a Serb enclave in the capital Pristina, setting UN vehicles on fire and stoning police who fired rubber bullets. US troops were evacuating Serbs whose apartments were under attack. Kosovo's international airport, located on the outskirts of the provincial capital Pristina, was closed. In Belgrade, the capital of Serbia, Montenegro, demonstrations turned violent when the only city's 17th century mosque was set on fire by the hooligans. They clashed with police trying to guard the building, one of the oldest in the city, destroying cars near the mosque and looting shops. Another mosque in the southern city of Nice was also set ablaze. The Kosovo War ended in mid-1999 after a NATO air campaign drove Serb-dominated troops loyal to former Yugoslav President Slobodan Milosevic out of the province, who carried out massacres. Serbs see Kosovo as their ancient homeland. The predominantly Muslim ethnic Albanians want independence from Serbia-Montenegro. The province itself is UN-administered but remains part of Serbia-Montenegro, the successor state to Yugoslavia, with its final status to be decided by the United Nations. But the lack of movement on the status question has left post-war tensions boiling.
Defense Minister Shaul Mufaz said that the United States will support the Israeli unilateral separation plan from the Palestinian lands when Prime Minister Ariel Sharon visits Washington in a few weeks. The Israeli defense minister visited Washington and met with senior officials from the United States administration, including Vice President Dick Cheney, Secretary of State Colin Powell, and Defense Minister Donald Rumsfeld. Mufaz said that the American administration views the Israeli unilateral separation plan as historic, pointing out that the plan allows Israel to fight terrorism at the same time that it opens the door for the continuation of the dialogue with Palestinians at a later time.
A large spectrum of subjects, especially the issue of the disengagement plan in Gaza. I believe that it is a historic move. This plan will create a better security situation for the state of Israel. It will keep the door open for the continuation of the dialogue with the Palestinians based on President Bush's vision and the roadmap, and will give us the possibility to continue to fight against terrorism if it will need it.
The Israeli occupation forces arrested Zaid Ali Abu Sultan from Hayy al-Salam, north of Rafah city. A reporter said that several military vehicles and 3 bulldozers, under the cover of Apache helicopters, went deep inside Hayy al-Salam and razed agricultural land and fruit trees. Then occupation soldiers stationed themselves on rooftops in the neighborhood. Also, the Israeli occupation forces arrested a number of citizens from Nablus. According to eyewitnesses, these forces are supported by a number of military vehicles that raided the Palestinian district from different areas. These forces were mainly present in hidden areas, the Lata refugee camp and Kafr Khalil village. They raided homes and arrested a number of citizens. Meanwhile, the Parliamentary Union of the Islamic Organization Conference member states condemned the construction of the Israeli apartheid wall, which eliminates any hope of establishing an independent Palestinian state with Holy Jerusalem as its capital. The Parliamentary Union released a statement at the conclusion of its third conference, which was held in the Senegali capital of Dakar, condemning the Israeli policy of political assassinations and collective punishment against the Palestinian people, and destruction of historical sites through the continued excavation under the Holy Al-Aqsa Mosque. The statement also demanded that Israel remove curfews that have been permanently enforced against Palestinian people and the legitimate and elected President Yasser Arafat, and emphasized on the Palestinian right of return, as well as their right of independence and freedom. Meanwhile, the General Secretary of the Arab League, Amr Moussa, urged the International Monetary Fund to quickly intervene by asking Israeli occupation forces to return the money it stole from Palestinian banks in Ramallah and to prevent Israel from repeating its aggressions against financial institutions in the Palestinian-occupied territories. Amr Moussa wrote a letter to Dr. Abdul Shakur Sha'lan, the Executive Director of the International Monetary Fund, pointing out that the signed agreements between the Palestinian Liberation Organization and Israel, specifically the Paris Economic Agreement, clearly states that the Palestinian Authority is the only authorized entity to supervise banks that fall under the jurisdiction of the Palestinians.
With just one day to go before Iranians ring in the new year, citizens across the country honor an old tradition. On the last Thursday of the year, pay graveside visits and wash with rosewater the tombs of their loved ones who are resting in peace, paying for their souls. Zahra Cemetery is especially packed with families of martyrs who put their lives on the line for the glory of Islam in Iran during the 1980s Iraqi imposed war. Janin Said Tawfiqi has more on the story.
Miles away from the capital, where streets are packed with shoppers in the run-up to the Iranian New Year, people have assembled here to pay tribute to their loved ones. Bunches of flowers are laid here on the tombs, which stand side by side. Thus, remembrance is a big custom in Iran, in which people pay respect to the dead. This couple have made their way here to greet their son, who was killed in 1984 during the Iraq-imposed war. The parents are at least delighted with the fall of this statue. I'm happy to see the man who took away my son toppled at last, she says. Nothing has changed in the course of time. We are still in grief. The cemetery south of Tehran is filled with thousands of fallen Iranian servicemen who showed ultimate sacrifice in the face of a man who's all but history now. The Iraq-imposed war came to an end almost 16 years ago, but for many grieving relatives, the pain is still as fresh as ever. The downfall of Saddam Hussein was enough reason for the nation to go into raptures less than a year ago, although there still exist key questions about those who supported the former Iraqi strongman. This is Sasan Hospital at the heart of Tehran, home to many chemical victims of the 8-year war. Mohammed takes each breath as a stabbing knife suffering on his bed. He was gassed in a military operation codenamed Karbala 8. This hospital is my second home. I come here whenever the symptoms worsen. For example, this year I've been here 9 times, says Mohammed. Many Iranian soldiers were affected by nerve and mustard gases supplied by the West to Saddam Hussein. Thousands of martyrs, a large number of war veterans, and an unheard voice. This is a legacy of a war, which was orchestrated by those who said,
"We learn more about the atrocities of the Iraqi regime and the deep fear that Saddam Hussein has instilled in the Iraqi people. Yet no scheme of this enemy."
Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities. And the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.